Hello and welcome back. I am your host, Tyler, and
Hello. Sorry. I am here. I am Justin.
and we're here to talk about video games and things that are not video games. Actually, we're really not talking about a lot of video games today, just things about video games. So, Justin,
Hi.
what you been playing or doing this last week?
Um, Overwatch. Been playing Overwatch still, unfortunately. That's growing old very quickly. Um, I've been trying Valorant again. I've never really gone into that game, like really into it, but I've been feeling some Overwatch burnout recently because it is like the only shooter that I really play a lot. And I need something else. Other than
Overwatch
that,
burnout, you say?
yeah,
It's a sad day. It is a
it is
very
a sad
very
day.
sad day. I've also played some Overwatch. I am pretty much just doing the weekly challenges every week. That kind of gets my fill in, and then I don't feel the need to keep playing. I'm not a competitive Overwatch player. And then I also did all of the challenges for Halo Infinite this week because they have an event going on, a 10 tier battle pass for 2 weeks that I went through and completed. And if you do all the challenges, there's also a tactical Clippy. Do you know who Clippy is, Justin?
No.
So in the before time on Microsoft Word or other Microsoft programs, I think it's on Excel, but I know for Word in particular. If you're having troubles, you don't know what to do. There's this little paper clip with eyeballs that you could click on and then type in what you're trying to do, what you're trying to figure out, and he will help you. He is a Microsoft icon. He is the OG mascot. And so they gave him one of the tactical Halo helmets, and you can equip that to your weapons as one of the gun charms or whatever you call those in games today. So yeah, I did that. It was all right. The event is specifically one game mode. The game mode was actually kind of unique. So one team has set weapons and camos, infinite camos. So like it wears off, but you can just keep reusing them. So you got to time it properly. And the other team has the sensor, the threat sensor or whatever. We shoot it and then it highlights everybody that's in that radius when it pulses. So the one team is basically invisible. The other team has a way of detecting where they are, and it's one flag. So one team's defending the one with the sensors, and the other ones have to sneak in. It was pretty good, but I guess all the challenges are based in that game mode. So after playing it for I don't know 20 rounds, I was kind of done with it by the end of it. But I had my fun. Any other games or any other things that you did this week?
No, not really. I haven't been really trying anything, obviously, besides Valorant. I've just been sticking with what I've been playing.
So I have also been playing a couple games. I said last week, I think I said this on the podcast. I started God of War 2. I finished God of War 2. I don't really have any interest of doing like the challenge or I don't know if God of War 2 had challenge modes. I know some of them do. I don't really care about getting like the bonus outfits or playing it on the hardest difficulty. That's not really my thing. I just want to play through the game, experience it, be able to yeah, experience it for myself, play the story on normal and so on. And so I did that and I think it's way better than the first. I think purely because of the fact I want to keep playing more God of War after finishing this game is probably a better sign. The
Yeah.
first game I finished it and I was like, thank goodness. And then I looked at God of War 2. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to just do this again. Meanwhile, after God of War 2, I'm like, man, I should start God of War 3. So I think that's a better sign that I come away from the game just less frustrated. I think the puzzles were less overly obnoxious and slow and obtuse. I thought the combat was a little bit smoother, less enemies that just kind of stun you constantly, and They still have my biggest gripe in God of War are the snake Medusa things that will turn you into stone, and then if any other enemy hits you, you immediately die. And if you're fighting a bunch of those things, one of them is trying to stun you, the other one is attacking you. You might end up in a situation where you get like, I don't know, hit by one of them, but because you can't move, you get turned into stone. But the other one hadn't finished its attack, so it attacks you while you're stoned because you couldn't even respond, and all of a sudden you instantly die. Can't stand that. But there was a lot less of that in this game. And because I wanted to keep playing, I immediately popped on to God of War Chains of Olympus, which is a PSP game. And I have some gripes. Not with the game. The game was fine. It was like 4 hours. I completely leveled up my character. Was it essential? No. Unless you're playing all the God of War games, I don't think, if you want to just get the story, just play the main, God of War 1, 2, 3, maybe Ascension, and then just jump to the new ones. I don't think Chains of Olympus was anything special there. But it's like a good 4 hour game. You can play it over a weekend. I played it over the course of one day because it's 4 hours. I had the day off. But, and I was starting to tell you this, I said I'd wait for the podcast. PlayStation sucks. Okay. So what happened is PlayStation Now was the subscription service. So you can stream PS3 games, and you have some PS4 games and everything. Well, they updated that to the PlayStation Plus with the extra and the premium tier, right?
Yes.
The God of War PSP games, their PS3 remastered versions, right? Those used to be on PlayStation Now. And when they converted it to PlayStation Plus, they removed them. In doing so, I have to buy or play it on PS3. So I had to, one, dig up the PS3. The PS3 plugged into HDMI, just black screen, not working. I figured out. I have all modern TVs and stuff. Like I have an old tube TV, but I would have to go and find like the cables, which I don't have for PS3, to hook it up to like the, I don't know if it's RGB or whatever. No, it's not RGB. What are the cables? I don't know. The AVI or something, some acronym. You have to hook up the little cables. I didn't have that, so I'm trying to figure it out. I was able to hard reset my console in order to, I had to boot it into safety mode, then reset it that way, and then authorize HDMI. So, first of all, that's just stupid. Super frustrating there. I get 2006 was a different time. HDMI wasn't the standard, but come on. This is even like the original 2006 one. This is like a 2009, 2010 when they revamped it and took out like PS2 backwards compatibility. So, first of all, PlayStation 3 sucked trying to get that to work. Well, I own the God of War saga on, it's like the whole all 5 games or whatever sits on my shelf. I didn't realize that includes God of Wars 1, 2, and 3 on disc, and then the download code for it was a great voice crack if that just came through on the mic. The download code for the PSP games. I bought the game used, thought it was physical. I don't know why, I've just never opened it. Does not have physical games. So I was like, okay, well, I know the physical ones exist. Well, because they're no longer streaming, and you can't buy PS3 games digitally on like PS4 or anything like that, the price has jumped. I don't know if it's actually jumped. I don't know if it's always been this high. It's like $50. I found copies that were like 35, 40 shipping from Canada or another country, but they were like scratched or they had some other issues. It's like $50 for a good copy of this game. Not willing to drop $50. Also, I wanted to play it that day, so I'm like, what the heck? So trying to figure that out, and I'm like, well, there was a whole hassle last year. I don't remember the resolution. Is the PlayStation 3 PS Plus or the PlayStation Store still open? Well, it is. Connecting to the internet took like 3 console resets because it just did not want to connect. Finally get it connected to the internet. Jump on the PlayStation Store. And I found out, oh, also, you can't buy it on the website. You can't buy PS3 games anymore on PlayStation.com. You have to go on your PlayStation 3 store on the PlayStation 3 to buy things. So I look it up on the PlayStation 3 store, finally. and it's $10. Well, that's great. $10, 2 games, probably about 10 hours worth of content. Totally fine with that. I'll spend $10. I add to cart. I go to purchase. Chooses payment method. Great. Chose my credit card. Well, last purchase was on a different console, so you have to verify your card information. Okay, that seems perfectly reasonable to me. Put the security code and the address, or not the address, the date in there. And cannot verify. Please, please try again later. Well, how about a different card? Cannot verify. Also, it doesn't matter if you're paying with a different card. It asks you for the most recent card. So I have like a Visa and a MasterCard and so on and so forth. Uh, it always asks me the information for one card in particular. Would not work. Tried resetting it, tried reconnecting it, tried everything. Tried removing that card so that it asked me security information on a different card, and it did. And I put the security information for that. It still doesn't work. Can't figure it out. At some point, I found a Reddit post which is like, yeah, you can buy funds, and we had a gift card, so I just put a gift card in there. I had a gift card from the holidays. You can add funds, and then you can remove all your credit cards or all your payment methods from the PlayStation account. Also, the PayPal, I tried that, didn't work either. You can remove all your payment methods from your account after you add funds, and then it will let you buy the game. So I did that, and I eventually got to buy the game. And it was like 45 minutes of trying to figure that out. And then I go to download it, and if you don't remember with PlayStation 3, you have to like prepare to install or prepare to download, install, preparing to run game for free. Like there's just like loading screen after loading screen. And it doesn't matter that I'm getting like 250 down from my PlayStation 5 right next to my PS3. Doesn't matter. The download speed was like a megabit every 15 seconds. Like these games weren't big, but I had to leave my console on overnight so I could download these games. And then when I woke up in the morning, had to set them to install. Like, oh my gosh. PS3 games are infuriating. It would have been way better if I had the disc. But I'm not spending $50 on this disc because PlayStation took it off streaming. I refused. So after all of that, I got to play a decent 4-hour God of War game that I actually, it didn't hinder anything. I think it's better than God of War 1. It's shorter. I completely leveled up Kratos. I maxed out every single, weapon and ability. Fine game. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to God of War 3. The hassle of getting to play that game, totally not worth it.
Sounds like a fun experience.
I've learned that I don't like the PS3 as much, and I didn't play a lot of PS3. You played PS3. I had the 360 that generation. I have no regrets about which console I had in that generation. Like, oh my gosh. So that's what I played this week. And we also watched some movies, but that's the main topic for this week. So anything else you did this week before we move on here?
No, nothing as exciting as manhandling the PlayStation menus for 2 hours.
Yep. Okay. Well, moving on then. The main topic we wanted to talk about is video game adaptations. Last of Us came out. We were recording this after last week. We recorded Sunday night after the episode. We're not waiting that late. We try to get this out on Monday if we can. We're not going to wait until Sunday night again. So, second episode hasn't even dropped when we're recording this. We obviously can't talk about it. But what we can talk about are some of the other movie adaptations that we've seen in recent time, or I guess video game adaptations, but they just happen to all be movies this time. And yeah, we're going to talk about the other Sony properties that have been adapted, and then another one being Warcraft. So we'll start with Uncharted, because that movie is probably the most well-known out of the bunch, I would argue. Probably the most mainstream that people saw.
Mm-hmm.
Uncharted came out last year. It was featuring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg and some other people that I don't remember the names. I'm sorry. The big names of the movie were those two.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start, but I thought this movie was okay. I don't think it's a bad movie. However, I don't think it's a good Uncharted movie. And everybody I've talked to that's seen the movie, they said, yeah, it was pretty good. Like nothing amazing, but pretty good. And then I always have to ask, have you played the games? And they say, no, I haven't gotten around to those. Okay, so you enjoyed the movie. What is your thoughts on this movie so far, or just your overall thoughts?
I I don't want to be one of those people, but 90% of the movie was kind of ruined for me with the casting picks. I just could not think of it as Uncharted with Tom Holland being Nathan Drake and Mark Wahlberg as Sully. I mean, I know what they were going for with like the young Sully and the young Nathan Drake, but it just did not work for me. It was really weird, and I don't, I don't can't really call it bad because it wasn't like an awful movie or something. Like it wasn't anything wrong with this, the plot, the acting obviously was fine. It just was not Uncharted, which I don't know. If you're gonna make a video game adaptation, I feel like you've got to really stick it to the source material if you're gonna, try to please the people that actually played the games. Something I really like about the new Last of Us show is, not just the casting, but it's like basically like you're watching somebody play the video games, but it's a show.
Yeah, I don't like the origin story angle for adaptations most of the time. My problem with Uncharted, as you mentioned, and I am going to get into the weeds here. I don't like the whole. Well, it's a young Sully and it's a young Nathan. This is the origin of it. It's like, well, why are you telling that in movie form? It's a game series. Adapt the game. If the game
Hmm.
series wants to, you know, do a whole origin story, let them do that. Or if you have a popular couple movies, then you can do a prequel. But a lot of people would say like, well, if you just jump in the middle, how are people going to know who's who or what's going on? Well, Nathan Drake and Sully were established in the beginning of the games. Why can't you jump in? What's funny to me, a lot of Tomb Raider and Uncharted, they're, from my interpretation, they are a modern video game version of Indiana Jones. I think that's fair to say, right?
Hmm.
The first Indiana Jones and the second and the third, and the third had a little bit of prequel stuff ish, kind of. His old young Indy. In the first Indiana Jones, he's an established. He is already the archaeologist treasure hunting. He's got a history. He literally starts the movie already like at the end of one of his adventures. You don't have to do an origin story for characters for people to understand who the character is. Like audiences are smart enough to know, okay, he's the treasure hunter. He's the old wisecracking, you know, whatever. Like I
Mm.
just didn't think they needed to do a young. You could have done a semi-old, it was originally this movie is in the works for years, right? Mark Wahlberg was originally going to be Nathan Drake. And then because the movie was in the works so long, they felt that he was getting too old to even be Nathan Drake. So they made him Sully. Now, I don't know all the show notes and how this worked out over years. I just know that's at some point Mark was going to be Nathan, then he ended up being Sully. Why? Like, don't change the characters. Like, I don't understand. There's something so great, like you said, with The Last of Us, where these are established characters. These are already people that's what people like is who the character is. You don't need to change the character to the format. You just need to change how the story is presented to the format. I I'm gonna get heated this episode. I'm already. What else you got on the Uncharted movie while I'm collecting my thoughts and taking some water?
I just I wanted to like it really bad. I'm a big Naughty Dog nerd, mostly because of you. You got me into it as like a child, but it just makes me sad that it wasn't very accurate to the games or any of the characters really. Maybe Chloe, but that was really it, not the main focus of the movie. It's hard for me to. I feel like Tom Holland can't really get out of that, awkward teenager. Like he's playing as. Yeah, I don't want to keep reducing him down to the same role, but like the Spider-Man Peter Parker kind of.
No, he kind of fits that where he's.
He didn't really
I
go
don't
for
think
the
he's
charismatic Nathan
growing.
Drake.
I don't think he's really growing like height wise. Like he just looks like a young kid, and and obviously, I think Tom Holland's a good actor. I
Mm,
just don't think he was the right role for this. He was cast as the right person here. I do always enjoy the little tidbits of like, hey, this is kind of a you know a cameo or whatever with the Nolan North cameo. I do
mm.
appreciate that. Although I still it's almost like salt in the wound a little bit though, where it's like at some point somebody was talking about it and they're like, if they would have made this movie way earlier when it originally entered production, Nolan North could have been Nathan Drake in the movie. That would have been just perfect. The whole thing is based on him anyways. Like Nathan Drake's, his charismatic nature and his voice obviously and everything. The facial modeling, like how easy could it have been? Like I don't know. I don't pretend to actually know how movies are made. Obviously, there's a lot more variables going into, you know, just put the voice actor. No, that's not always as easy. Some people, actually, is it Marlene, right? In The Last of Us,
Yeah.
I believe she's the voice actor for Marlene in the game as well. Like she actually just happens to be. She's talking about an interview after the episode. I don't know if you watched that little like making of the episode after. She, I could be completely wrong here, and maybe I'm confusing a different character, but somebody basically was the voice actor. I think it was Marlene, and they, making the game 10 years ago, they were portraying a character, but they basically grew into like the appropriate age and everything, and it just made sense. Where it's like, well, yeah, you could just continue to be this character, and I think that's great when a movie or some sort of adaptation can implement that. Now, obviously, some things that are animated or whatever, or things just don't make sense whatsoever. I don't think Troy Baker would have fit as Joel as a adaptation there. Like obviously that's not quite gonna work out. But I don't like the casting. I didn't like the origin story. I just so much wrong with this movie, and it's not a bad movie. It's just a bad adaptation. I think.
Yeah.
Man, I just did a lot of ranting. Are you ready to do some more?
Sure.
Any other thoughts on Uncharted before we move on to the next one?
No, I just
When
I want to like it, but it's it just doesn't feel like Uncharted. It's fine to show somebody that's never played the games, but it might feel like an insult to a big fan.
Now, open honesty for us, I've seen the movie twice, but the other movies we watched this week in preparation for this episode, I have not watched this movie since November. I watched it. I believe you and I both went opening night in the theaters to see it, or at least opening weekend. Right? We did that. I'm just making
Yeah.
sure. Okay. And then I watched it on a plane actually, so I watched it a second time while I was, you know, trying not to get motion sick on a plane. Have you seen it any time besides that opening
No, I
night
have not
theaters?
watched it again.
Okay. You haven't subjected yourself to the pain?
No, I refuse.
Okay. Well, let's move on. We watched this movie. We watched both these movies last night in preparation for this episode. I've seen this movie before. We actually talked about it on the podcast before. You had not. And believe it or not, Justin hasn't seen the end of this movie because we couldn't finish it. We just got we hit a wall. Okay, there was only so much we could take. We're talking about the Ratchet and Clank movie. I don't where to begin. Justin, you start overall here. What are your thoughts here?
That movie was unbearable. I think we made it halfway through the movie before I just refused. I wanted to go to Texas Roadhouse. We left. We ate food.
And the food was good. Yeah.
Food was good. Movie, ass. Wasn't very good. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Ratchet and Clank. I've never actually, I don't even think I've played a single game. So
Neither
I
have I.
can't really
Yeah, open
say if
honesty
it's
here. So,
accurate.
with that last movie, we both have played all the Uncharted games. Actually, I haven't played the Uncharted 4, the
Lost
one with
Legacy.
Chloe. Yeah.
Oh, it's so
I haven't played that, but I've played all the other Uncharted games, as have you. So, we haven't played Ratchet and Clank, and then when we talk about Warcraft later on, neither of us have played. We've played a bit of World of Warcraft. You've played a little bit more than I have, but we've never played like the Warcraft games, right? And we
yeah.
haven't really we weren't there for original World of Warcraft. We haven't invested that much time into World of Warcraft. So Uncharted we knew about. Ratchet and Clank we know nothing about. So we're just interpreting this as a movie, not even as a quote unquote adaptation, to be fair. But as a movie, it was terrible. I think it had like one joke that I don't think you I gave it like a small like internal chuckle. You didn't laugh at it, but my roommate was laughing at it. I think that was it. I think that was the only time that movie like kind of brought. Oh no. There's a second time the movie brought a smile to my face, and I looked at you because I appreciate cameos, right? If you're doing an adaptation, don't just hit people over the head with it. But you don't need a cameo every 5 minutes of the movie. But if you have one or two in the movie, that's good. Appreciated. Love it. I did see Daxter from Jack and Daxter when they were like scanning for Ratchet's species. I think
Mhm.
Sly came in there too, Sly Cooper.
Yeah.
I appreciated that. Did nothing to save the movie. The movie was unbearable. It was very. The problem is, I don't even think it was a good kids movie. Definitely a kids movie, but it didn't have humor. The plot just kind of like thrusted forward. It was very typical, like hero wanted to do this thing, got in a lucky situation, proved himself. Like, okay, I've seen this in every kids movie ever. And I like Insomniac. I've never played a Ratchet and Clank game, but I've played Sunset Overdrive, and I've played a little. I've played like a minimal amount of Resistance, as we talked about a couple episodes ago, and I've played the Spider-Man games. They can be comedic. They can have some good jokes or some good whatever. I mean, Ratchet and Clank, the entire series, the title of every game has a joke in it. Like up your arsenal, like they're all like little innuendo joke things. That was not in the movie. It didn't translate whatsoever. And so the quality was fine. The cast was fine. I think you and I could both agree with that. Like the animation didn't look bad. At least I don't think. What would you say?
I'd say it was fine animation. Everything was obviously like voice acting is a kids movie,
Mm-hmm.
so
But
all that
like
was fine. But I
they
would
had like
never
Rosario
subject a
Dawson
child to that.
and
That was
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that movie was torture. I, I
Yeah.
I don't I'm speechless.
It's
I
funny.
don't
I
know.
remember some of the movie. I remember one joke way back in the day when I watched it before. We had a whole discussion about this last night. You're like, didn't you watch this before? And you said it was all right. And I said, no, it was better than Trolls. I remember it being better, but I also didn't watch it. I just played it in the background while I worked at Family Video. So that's why. But I do remember one joke at the end of the movie. I don't remember what the joke was, but I remember there being a joke at the end of the movie that I enjoyed. That's it. That's yeah. I took notes on each of the movies on things I wanted to talk about. I didn't have a lot of notes on Ratchet and Clank, but one of the notes I wrote was just rough, just the word rough. So movie kind of flopped. I think it financially flopped, critically not good. How did Uncharted do? I think that movie made decent money. It just isn't reviewed okay, but it's just. Am I wrong on that? I do you know?
I,
Google's
you
cheating.
said, yeah, I don't know how well it did, but
Okay. I would assume Uncharted did okay. Like financially, wasn't like a groundbreaking thing, but I'd assume it did okay. Any closing thoughts on Ratchet and Clank before we move on here?
if you're wondering how bad it was, don't figure it out to the one of you listening. Just take the word. No.
Just assume, yeah, take our word for it. Yeah. Well, that leaves us after we went to dinner last night. We then watched a better movie. We watched the Warcraft movie. I'll start this one. This was the best of these three movies, for sure, in my opinion. I definitely, if I had to go back and watch one of these movies, I'm watching Warcraft again. I'd rather revisit this movie than Uncharted. If I had to guess, or if I had to choose a sequel to be made for any of these movies, I'd also would rather see a sequel to Warcraft than an Uncharted 2 with these characters, or I would not even bother with Ratchet and Clank. I no. What would you agree with that sentiment? You think that was the best of the
Yeah,
three?
if I was go rewatch one of these, I would be watching Warcraft.
Just to start, and for this movie, I do know actually. Did you watch that video I sent you at all?
No, because it was like 1 in the morning.
That's fair. So, if you're listening to this and you're interested in this movie at all, go watch it's like a 38-minute video about the development of this movie and some of the things and how it translates to the games and so on and so forth. All right, excuse the interruption. There's a video I sent Justin. He hasn't watched it yet, but I got to find out a little bit more. It's a movie Divided, and it's on YouTube. 38 minutes. Kind of talks about the production. Don't know the YouTuber's name. I apologize. Just search Warcraft movie Divided. It'll probably come up. It's really good, like reviewing the adaptation, reviewing the movie as a whole, talking about the production and the quality and the things that went well, didn't go well, the director, some of the castings. Really good deep dive in that movie. And I'm gonna agree with the off the bat. The quality is great. I think the visuals are pretty fantastic. There's nothing. I mean, some of the armor looks goofy sometimes, but it's accurate. I This is with limited WoW experience. Just let me specify with all of this. But from what I recall of the, oh my gosh, what is the Alliance? That home city there,
Stormwind.
Stormwind. From what I recall of Stormwind, like Stormwind looked fantastic in this
Mhm.
game. Building the portal right and like the visuals, the orcs in particular, because I mean, I'd say a little less than 50% of the casting, but half the movie is about the orcs. They look fantastic in live action. Like CG quality was pretty good. I don't think I had any issues. Like they looked believable. Now there's an element of these are some giant like Hulk-sized orcs, and they're fighting, these regular, actual acting humans. So sometimes when the humans are able to like deflect a blow from this basically the Hulk, I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe scaling wise. I get that's how it is in the game. Maybe that's a little less believable, but like the things they looked real, they looked accurate, and I appreciated that. Just the quality that went into this movie, the set pieces, the design, the magic looked really good. It didn't look like cheesy or low quality. It looked good. It was a good adaptation visually. I'm gonna give you some room to add, so I'm not just dominating the conversation here.
I would say this is the opposite of the Uncharted like problem where as an adaptation it's really good. Or I that's me assuming because I haven't played too much Warcraft or I have quite a bit of time on WoW, but not enough to judge this. But I think as an adaptation, it did really good. It had all the, like the clunky armor pieces that, you you'll see like a Stormwind guard wearing. That's all in there. Stormwind, like you said, looked phenomenal. The orcs, it was all. You could tell you're watching like it didn't feel like another Lord of the Rings copy and paste, just fantasy movie. It was very distinct as a movie. I did not think it was perfect. I wouldn't say it was bad, but I don't know. I have select issues with it that there's a lot going on
I
at
say, yeah, let's
once.
let's dive into those issues. What you got going on first for problems with the movie?
I feel like there's multiple plots happening at the same time, and then sooner or later it does clean itself up, especially near the end. But during the beginning, I think it's hard to pick up on what's starting. Maybe I was just dozed off at the beginning or something. I don't know, but I don't know. I thought that it could be a little confusing at times to figure out what a character wants, what's their motive during a certain scene. Again, and that kind of ended during, the second half of the movie. That was all clear. There was kind of some plot twists that weren't very well hidden, but it was
Yeah,
not an awful movie. It just was not like
the
a
twist in
game changer.
particular uh, wasn't great. Wasn't a huge fan of that. And this is all again to say that we don't. Some of these things kind of happen in the game. We don't know the plot of Warcraft or World of Warcraft or whatever to actually say like, this happened differently. That video I mentioned earlier mentioned some of it. I'm not familiar. I'm still not familiar enough to say like, oh yes or no. But yeah, I could agree with the too many plots. It felt like it reminds me of Game of Thrones, where you have a whole separate side of things that's doing their own thing, and they like once in the entire show interact with this other side. And besides that, separate plot. Things are going on. And in Game of Thrones, that works. You can tell Daenerys' story and Jon Snow and what's going on in the capital and all these other characters because you have a whole show. Daenerys is like on the other side of the world for 6 seasons, right? That works. In a movie where you're trying to tell, I think overall I'd say about 3 plots. And they cross over and connect somewhat frequently, but you have the orc and his disdain with Gordon. I think that was his name. Gordon. Does that sound right? Or am I
I
wrong
don't
there?
know a single character's name. I cannot remember one.
I know a couple. Basically, Spiky Orc. Okay, you have
Yes.
dude that's upset with Spiky Orc on the orc side of the story. Then you have Lorathan. I'm just gonna stick with Lorathan. I'm gonna think that's correct. Him and his son and his sister with the king and their whole plot on what are we gonna do, and the alliance isn't formed yet, and we need to stop the horde from coming through this portal. Then you have the magic dude and his like self-discovery of his powers and his role in the guardian and how he interacts with the guardian, and then discovering the guardian is actually whatever. I guess that's a spoiler. This movie's old. I'm gonna spoil it. Yeah, just the magic. There's like 3 components to this movie. The magic side and the human side. They kind of work together. I get that. The other stuff, not so much. Like, cut out the magic stuff, and if you just had the humans and orcs, like Warcraft 1, orcs and humans, or humans and orcs, I don't remember what the order was. If you just focus on those 2 factions, you could probably do a split story, and it wouldn't be terrible. But with 3 factions, like some people who play WoW, they might be heavily invested in like, oh man, I have 2,000 hours on this dwarf. Well, you got about 4 scenes with the dwarfs. That's it. And in some ways, I think Warcraft would translate better to a TV show, like a Game of Thrones kind of thing, where you could
Hmm.
have some dwarves, and you could have some elves and the humans, and then you could have the orcs, and then the orcs were the only part of the horde that I saw that were in there. But they don't really talk about the Draenei. There was one scene with them in there. You just had too much going on for a movie, so you either needed to expand it to a show, or you need to reduce all the elements. I don't know what the solution would have been, but that's how I would have fixed my problems with the movie. But it also didn't stop me from enjoying the movie, just recognizing it was not a great movie. Okay, and I feel like I'm talking a lot. So what else you got, Justin?
I don't know. I with all the I can't remember a single character's name, honestly. They got the Jon Snow guy and his son. They got Orc with long hair with baby. They have Gamora, she was cool. They had the King who had about like 15 minutes of screen time, who's still on the front cover. They had like the twink elf, not twink elf, the twink wizard, old man long hair wizard that looks like a cosplayer, and uh, evil the bad guy, the orc bad guy, the spiky orc that you said.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been another orc that sounded like Optimus Prime, but I forget his name. He was bald.
The Hammer Dude.
Yeah, he sounded like Optimus Prime. I think the cursed or the orc lady, her Gamora, it was her like, what is her name was like cursed or something. It was
It was Rona or like Corona or something like that.
yeah, coronavirus. She was. I liked her character. No, I don't know. A lot of it. I probably need to rewatch this movie again. There was a lot happening. A lot of characters try to learn for one movie, and it didn't even explore all of, what can be explored when you're making a Warcraft movie or any adaptation. Like you said, mostly about races. I don't think there was a single like Worgen undead. I don't even know all the races again. But
Where were the pandas?
exactly where the Pandorans. Thank you. What what are they doing? They're yeah. I don't care if that was like a later expansion. There was not a single one, and for that reason alone, 4 out of 10, two out of 10 actually.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
harsh.
can't believe it.
Actually, if I had to rate this movie, I think it's like a 6 or 7 out of 10. I think like it's not awful, but I recognize it's not like great. Like I don't know.
Mm.
I could even bump it to a 7 if I was like more in the Warcraft lore and I thought it was a good adaptation. But I don't know. So, but I do know how this movie did, and unless things have changed in the last like year, like since like last summer, this is actually the highest grossing video game adaptation to date. So, sequels. Let's talk about that real quick. They kind of left off with Thrall, so it's not. I don't think it's a spoiler. This movie's old. Whatever. Uh, this is also just in the lore for a game that's 30 years old. So yeah, you can deal with it if you get spoiled. I'm sorry. Thrall is like hinted at, right? And there's like a. It's not really an after credit scene because they don't do that, but the little baby supposed to be Thrall. I want to see a sequel made. I want to see a sequel with more focus. They kind of leave it open for a sequel. Obviously, baby Thrall is there. Obviously, the orcs are still there. The king is dead. They basically just set up the war between the two, right? With hopes of being able to end the war. The story is not completed for all these characters. Yeah, this movie very successful in terms of I think it actually still lost Blizzard money, but like overall was a big movie. And so I do want to see a sequel. but I don't think a direct sequel is the option. I don't really want to see all these actors return. One, I think it's been what 7 years now, so I don't think that's going to be really good to just return everybody. But also, I think there are better stories to be told in the Warcraft universe. I personally, I just want to see them adapt a Lich King story. I'm completely biased, having not even played any of the Lich King or Warcraft 3. But that plot has always intrigued me, even back in the day when I didn't have a PC and I wasn't playing WoW, but I knew of it. The Lich King and that whole plot always been super interesting. I've always viewed that as the popular, Warcraft thing, the thing that appeals to me. Personally, I would love to see that adapted. Or I would love them to take a movie and focus on one side or the other. You can tell the story of the orcs, or you can tell the story of the humans, but it's kind of difficult in a short movie to do both. What do you think about sequels for any of these? But would you want to see them? Where do you think they would go?
I don't think I'd really want to see a sequel for any of these movies. If there was a Warcraft sequel, I maybe Thrall, but that's it. Like you said, none of the characters I wouldn't really want to see any of them return. I'd hope it'd focus on something different. The Pandaren specifically. That's a joke, but I don't know.
Live
I feel like
action
there's a
Kung
lot
Fu
more they could
Panda.
have explored. Exactly. This is all Kung Fu Panda propaganda.
Yeah, and the only other thing just to mention here, there have been talks for sequels and like ideas and pre-production ideas going around and pursuits. So we might get a sequel at some point. That's the part that it's worth talking about here. Is there is the possibility, but yeah, I don't think a direct sequel is the way to go. Any closing notes on these movies before we draft?
No, I think if I had to pick a favorite of these movies, I'd say Warcraft, even though I have a bias towards Naughty Dog and Uncharted, and I guess that makes me biased towards Sony, but I'm definitely not picking Ratchet and Clank. But yeah, it's the one I enjoyed the most. I'd rewatch it sometime, not immediately, but yeah, I semi enjoyed watching that one.
Alrighty. Well, we're gonna draft. I'm not gonna repeat the rules every time, but for the first 10 or so episodes, I'll repeat the rules. We are doing a snake draft, so I get to pick first this week because you picked first last week. We are picking this week our picks for video games that should get an adaptation. As we'll talk about them as we go, but maybe how we imagine that adaptation should go, or who would do it, or whatever. Any thoughts on why it should be? But yeah, we're gonna do probably 6 rounds again, unless we run out of ideas. And this week I didn't. I jotted down a bunch that I thought would be all right, but I didn't list them in any particular order. Normally, I don't know what you do, Justin, for prep, but I normally write down ideas and then basically line up my picks, and then if you take this, I'll just move on to the next one. What kind of prep work do you do, Justin?
About 10 minutes before the podcast, I start frantically taking notes and trying to remember what we're doing the podcast about. Stay prepared.
It's fair. You always got to be on edge.
Yeah. Never let
So,
him know your next move.
and real quick, this wasn't specified when I sent you the notes, but I just kind of assumed it. I can change this if you want. I assumed we're going to draft things that don't already have an adaptation, and also things that things that aren't already getting an adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you wrote down?
Do you mean like no like things that are getting in it? Like no
Don't
God
pick
of
Sonic
War?
the Hedgehog, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like obviously that's already got 2 movies and shows, and then also don't pick Mario or God of War, things that
Yeah.
are we're already getting those. Why no? So if all is fair and you agree with these rules, the first pick is very difficult. I feel like your list is just going to be completely different from mine. Like we're going to have completely different ideas. I think it's easy to pick things that already have a good story because that just makes sense for an adaptation. Like Mario, their choice for Mario, like it's just because he's popular, but you really just kind of have to make the story for
Mhm.
that. Um, but something that already has a great story that I genuinely think would be amazing adapted, and they could do so much with it. Uh, I'm not going to pick one or two. I'm just going to say they could do either or. But Red Dead Redemption, I think that would be a fantastic movie or show if they chose to do it that way. I don't know who would do it. I personally don't even watch a lot of westerns, but the story of that game of just like coming to terms with your past and the individual characters you met along the way and also just the historical era, the Mexican Revolution. I think that's what's going on, right? The Mexican Revolution,
Yeah,
first one. Just hunting down your brothers in arms. And then, of course, the way that game ends, and the original one, at least, I didn't play through all the second one. I barely got into
that's
it.
a sin.
I'm sorry. I played a bit of the second one, but not all the way through it. Uh, but I'm sure the second one also just has a fantastic story that would be great to follow. I think Red Dead Redemption would just be a perfect candidate for, adapt the story as is. Plenty of room to expand upon it if they needed to. Yeah, Red Dead. That's my choice.
That is a good. That is actually going to be one of mine. That was in my picks. So it's quite surprising.
Well, you have two picks. What's your first round pick here?
I You're gonna have to hear me out on this one because at first this probably sounds like a terrible idea, but a Legend of Zelda adaptation. I don't know if it'd be a movie or a show, but I think it would be cool to see that, entire world explored, in a way that I don't have to be in fear of a guardian chasing me and killing me. I would not want it to focus on Link as a character in general. I think Link should stay as a silent protagonist. I would not want them to try and explore
Who would you
giving
want
him
them
like
to
a
focus
personality
on?
or something. Probably, I'd still want Zelda, but if they could
You think
give
Zelda is like the main character?
maybe or like the family as a whole, like Zelda's past, because I think they could flesh that out. They haven't done that a lot. In Breath of the Wild, they started to with her whole like ability to seal the darkness and stuff, but she's most of the time been a secondary, character. And I wouldn't want them to try to. I just feel like they could really mess up Link if they made him the main character. I feel like it'd be hard to follow a good story that has never actually really had a character that has a set personality, and I don't know, it might just change it for me. I could be totally wrong on that. You might disagree, but that's just what I think.
It was on my list, but then I talked myself out of it because I felt they would either need to change so much about Zelda and focus on something completely different. Like you wouldn't focus on Link, but I feel like some people were going to get mad if you don't focus on Link because of
Mhm.
that. Or they would have to expand his character, and then it's probably not going to be super accurate, or it'd be a kids movie. And I am very optimistic for Mario, but like Ratchet and Clank is the other end of that spectrum, and I'm worried it could end up like that. So uh, I I I wrote it down, but I wasn't probably going to take it. Well, Justin, that was your first round. What's your second round pick here?
This is gonna be this is a less serious one, but if they were not doing a Mario movie, I would want an Animal Crossing movie. I would want it to have a same, you know, comedic cast that seems like it came from a fan casting, but I don't know. I feel like seeing Tom Nook voiced by like Morgan Freeman would be my dream. I think that's my wet dream, honestly. That is I would want an animal. I don't think Nintendo has the balls to do that, but I would very much love to see that. I think I'm the only one that has that, but
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where to go off of that. I think it would need to be some sort of comedic movie because Animal Crossing has no plot,
yeah.
and so some sort of goofiness would have to be going on. Wasn't on my list. Yeah, I don't know. Sure, that's where I'll leave it. Well, I have a second round pick. Trying to pick ones that I also feel like I'm at risk of losing, but I also have no idea what you would take. I want to get a variety of stuff. Okay. This one would be a show, and it's from BioWare. Mass Effect is already getting a TV show, but I think Dragon Age could be like a Game of Thrones esque show. Really, I think it would really be just more, just a different kind of Game of Thrones, I guess. Yeah, I mean, Dragon Age in particular, I've only played a little bit of it, never completed a game. I tried the first one out and I tried Inquisition out, both for a very brief period of time. But they're a little darker than typical fantasy, but they are fantastical with different species and all kinds of things. I think that it could be done well. I don't have much to say on the series itself, but I could imagine somebody basically taking on a competing with Game of Thrones or the next Game of Thrones or whatever. Like Amazon has the Lord of the Rings show right now, The Rings of Power. Obviously, HBO has their Game of Thrones thing. But if Netflix were to take it on, because they do a lot of video game adaptations, I could see them like actually pumping out a good, hey, here's our fantasy contender. Although I'm worried now, I don't think there's a Dragon Age show in the works, but I could be completely wrong. So while I pick my next pick, you should look that up for me
Okay.
because I I feel like I may have heard about something actually happening now, and now I'm an idiot. We'll see. So while you're looking that up, I'm gonna pick another one. I think I actually have a lot of Rockstar on here.
I think there's already a show.
What?
I think it's Netflix has done that.
Is there like an animated thing?
I think, yeah.
Dang it. That means I gotta change my pick. Like, is there one on there you can confirm?
Uh, I believe so, unless it's a completely different game, but it looks like, yeah, it's new. December 9th, 2022 is the first episode date. So,
Dang it. All right. I am an idiot. Okay. It didn't look like it got good reviews.
yeah, that's what
No,
I'm seeing.
maybe. Rotten Tomatoes is an 89%, but Google is saying no. Let's see here. Click on it. Oh, it's like an anime. Dang it. Audience score, not very good. Okay. Dragon Age, no longer on the table. Okay. I'm going to go with what my next pick was Bioshock. I think Bioshock is probably a pretty good contender for some weird, I don't know, like a good, like abstract, crazy movie. I just think that world in particular could probably be intriguing enough that a lot of fans of regular movies might see that and be like, wow, that looks crazy and unique and interesting. So I think Bioshock would be a pretty good adaptation. It's got a pretty good video game story. I don't think the story itself can be like one to one translated to a movie, but I think a story set in that world or a condensed version of that story for sure could be some sort of adaptation. So that's my number two pick then, since I've lost my number one. Okay, you know what? Because I lost Dragon Age, I still believe a good fantasy show that would compete with Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones should be the Elder Scrolls. I think that is a giant world with a lot of tales, and I can't pick The Witcher because The Witcher already exists. in the Witcher existed as a book and everything. Witcher is already an adaptation as a video game. So, Elder Scrolls. I think that would make a good fantasy show of some sort. I really don't think they should go with the movie. I think that's a bad idea. But yeah, Elder Scrolls show, that would be pretty good to compete with the other ones. Justin, you have a third round pick, and I'm going to verify that Elder Scrolls does not already exist as a show or movie.
Well, since you keep taking everything I have planned, I'm going to say a Left 4 Dead show. I think that would be fun. Cool. I think it would also be, a gory, campy, like Zombieland comedy kind of thing. But I don't know. I think that would be fun to watch. I'm not a huge Left 4 Dead nerd, mostly because I have not played it since forever. But I don't know. I just feel like they could. It's something that wouldn't be too hard to make, and not if you're basing it off characters from the game. I think it'd be a different, like a new cast of people, of original people. But I don't know. I think that'd be a fun show to watch.
Yeah, I could see it. Zombie shows are coming back into popularity, at least with The Last of Us. I don't know. They were running to the ground for a while, but I think they're doing okay now. So you got Left 4 Dead. Now you have a fourth round pick as well.
You snatched most of what I was planning on taking. So a lot of these picks are going to be kind of terrible. Persona apparently has a show. I had to Google that. There is an anime Persona show.
Well, that sucks.
um, Dungeons and Dragons is getting a movie with Chris Pine. Forgot about that.
Is there? Hold on. I don't think there's a Persona show. There's a Persona show that has nothing to do with the games. Like there's a
I think there's a
Korean.
Persona 5 anime. It just goes over the game, everything that happens in the game.
I see. I did not expect there to be so many of these things that are. I don't know. The problem with this, I guess, I'm realizing now is a lot of these things never come to fruition, or they're really, really poorly translated. So no Persona. What else are you looking at?
I'll just say Overwatch. It'd probably be animated. They've done really good animated shorts. The animated shorts are probably better than some of their game making decisions. But I don't know. They've already got a good established story or an established story that I think the fans would enjoy. I don't know how many new people would get into it. I also don't know how well it would do overall, but that is something and it's not been taken.
Don't mind me doing my research now on every single thing. So you had Overwatch as your fourth round pick. No, I have two. I wanted to get a horror movie on here because I feel like games can translate fairly, not easily, but most horror movies aren't that great of like a plot. They're kind of there just to scare you and do
Mhm.
things. So I feel like most horror video games would pretty much fit that role. But I'm going to go with The Evil Within because I like that game. I did play the first one, did not play the second one. I don't know, it's a good like psychological thriller. The monsters in that one like terrify me. The girl with like all the arms. Yeah, I like that game. It was pretty good. Although well, yeah, the game was pretty good to all right. It wasn't anything amazing. The first one at least. I would like to see it in movie form. That being said, I don't watch a lot of horror movies because I am a big wuss. But yeah, Evil Within. There is a The Evil Within movie, but it's a completely different, like it's not based on the game. So
Oh,
I looked that up to clarify. Thank goodness I did. Evil Within. Now, I did not decide or look up my next one, so I'm gonna have to think about it for about 2 seconds. For my fifth round pick, a good sci-fi action movie, maybe show. Again, this one in particular, I don't really know what would be best. I feel like movie, Half-Life. I think Half-Life would be an interesting kind of sci-fi end of the world action. It would probably be an action movie, I would guess. Yeah, Half-Life. I think that translates pretty well. I wouldn't mind seeing a Morgan Freeman, the mystery, the whole, what's that dude? The man that kind of stalks you throughout the series. That's like, do you know anything about Half-Life?
Absolutely not.
Okay, there's this dude that's like this interstellar being dude. It's like a man in a suit that like can stop time, and nobody knows what he is. It's still a mystery. Of course, that series doesn't really get a lot of new games. For the longest time, thought we were never getting a new game, but more or less, yeah, Half-Life. I think that translates well. I don't know if you have anything to say in that series. I don't think you've played any of them. I think I've tried the second one, but I would watch a show on it. Well, Justin, you have two more picks. There's one I'm surprised you have not taken, but I'll let you see if you can figure that out.
For my next pick, this is another one that it's a shooter that it kind of has some story to it, but it's not the main focus. There's not like a campaign mode, but there's characters that have stories. It is Apex Legends, and that's mostly because I want to see the Titanfall story continued. I feel bad that Titanfall 2 has kind of died, and it's more Apex now, and that's kind of the mainstream. I don't
I'm
know.
gonna
I
write
want to see
down
more of the Titanfall
Titanfall
story
slash
going
Apex
on.
Legends because I consider it the same series.
Yeah.
Go ahead and continue. I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
just would like to see Titanfall, the story continued. I thought it was an interesting world. I like Apex, but I don't know. Playing it reminds me that I can no longer, actually find a match when I go to play Titanfall.
Well, you got one more pick. Close out your draft. I'll read what we got so far. You have Legend of Zelda, Animal Crossing, Left 4 Dead, Overwatch, and the Titanfall slash Apex Legends series. I have Red Dead, Bioshock, Elder Scrolls, Evil Within, and Half-Life.
For my last pick, I'm going to pick a Grand Theft Auto. Wait, does that have an adaptation?
Nope, it doesn't.
Grand Theft Auto. That is my last pick.
It was
It'd
on my
definitely be
list. I really thought about it a lot, but
raunchy, kind of like I don't know,
like a Seth
HBO show
Rogen,
maybe or
James
something.
Franco kind of.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how well it would do, but I could definitely see that being a movie. Surprised it's not already a movie.
Did you hear there was a news
Definitely thought someone
story
would do that.
they were going to do somebody approached Rockstar with a movie idea for a GTA movie that starred Eminem as the main character.
That is amazing. I have not heard about that.
Yep, that apparently happened like before GTA 4 or around that. I don't know, sometime like last in the before 2010. Definitely would have been interesting. I think in my mind I'm very optimistic, and that would be really good. But maybe it wouldn't have been that great, but I don't. I think nowadays for sure that series is big enough. You can definitely get a good movie or a show coming out of it. Probably a movie, I would imagine, and you could probably get some big name writers and actors to sign on for that. Well, for my final pick, this one, okay, I gotta argue my point here, okay, because there's kind of technically, I just bumped the mic, kind of technically a show, but not really. I'm gonna argue it doesn't count. It's Quantum Break. Do you know what Quantum Break is?
Yes.
Okay. That was when Xbox first revealed the Xbox One, and they were also doing TV, right? Quantum Break was supposed to have a show developed alongside the game. It's made by Remedy, who also made like Control, and they're making Control 2. They made Max Payne. They also are making Alan Wake. The show basically got condensed to 3 or 4 episodes that just focused on a character that was like attached to the game, but you could even skip watching the episodes because it wasn't that relevant. It just kind of added to 1 or 2 side characters. So you could pretty much move on, and then yeah, like I said, so it's not really a show. It's only attached to the game. If you don't play the game, the show doesn't really make any sense. So it's not really its own show. However, I think Quantum Break, made by Christopher Nolan, who's just Remedy to me is like the Christopher Nolan of games, where their games are very abstract and psychological and make you think a lot, and you're like, what the heck is going on? And you can replay them and experience a whole nother, like, whoa, what? No? Okay. Quantum Break did that for me. It's all about time travel and how it kind of like it just compounds, and there's so many things, and it leaves on this really amazing cliffhanger. The gameplay itself, nothing too special, but I really liked it. I thought the abilities were cool. I liked the whole story. I bought into it. I thought it was good. On Twitter, the main actor said he'd be willing to do a part 2. He wants to talk to Xbox about it. Remedy probably won't make it, but they're doing Control 2 and Alan Wake 2, and they're remaking the original Max Payne with Rockstar, so they have all kinds of other stuff going on. But Christopher Nolan made Quantum Break. To me, would be an amazing movie. I would go. I mean, Christopher Nolan's my favorite director. I've seen almost all of his movies. I would go in a heartbeat to see that. Well, final list. I have Red Dead Redemption 1 or 2, anything of the BioShock series, The Elder Scrolls, Evil Within, Half-Life, and Quantum Break. You have Legend of Zelda, Animal Crossing, Left 4 Dead, Overwatch, Titanfall / Apex Legends, and Grand Theft Auto. Do you have any things on your list that you did not end up drafting?
Any no, the main one that was probably going to be my first pick actually was Red Dead, but that was your first pick. Surprised you picked that one actually.
I think it would translate so easily. I mean, not again. I don't pretend to think like, oh, I can make a movie or I can make a show. I know that takes a lot of work, huge team, budget, writers, so on. People smarter than me have to do that, but I think a Red Dead thing would be awesome. You didn't have anything else on your list?
No, I had to find a lot of replacements because you snatched most of everything I wanted. That or it secretly
I
had an adaptation.
I had a whole bunch. I thought for other horror movie options, Until Dawn would be okay. It would probably have to be one of those like abstract Netflix like experimental things if they wanted to do justice as an adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
But Until Dawn would be a really good campy one. Or Dead Space. Dead Space would be a really cool sci-fi horror one. I thought about I had GTA on my list. I had Red Dead on my list. But I do think L.A. Noire, the detective one, I thought that would translate as well as a good movie. But I didn't feel like taking that one. I'd rather have had Red Dead. I wasn't trying to take more Rockstar. Other ones I had Metroid. I saw that on some other people when I was doing my list of like, or my little bit of research before the podcast. Metroid would be okay. Same with Portal. I wrote it down as like backup options. Not convinced. I thought Far Cry would be an interesting one. A little like, thought provoking psychological movie. Ghost of Tsushima. I mean, I thought that would be a pretty cool like historical samurai movie. And then the one I think would have been my next pick. I'm surprised you didn't think of it or take it. Life is Strange.
Oh, forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean that one. I mean it's an episodic story-based game, so it's already kind of like, I mean, it's set up as a show as is. Just making an actual show. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think isn't there's an adaptation for that, I thought.
Is there? Do some
I,
research while I review.
I'm cheating with Google.
Splinter Cell. Tom Clancy already has a bunch of other ones. I don't even know if Splinter Cell has an adaptation. Metal Gear Solid. Kojima would make that if he could, but obviously that whole thing happened. And Deus Ex was another. It's a sci-fi one that might have an adaptation. I don't know. Oh, Max Payne. That's another one. It's another Remedy game. I don't know. There's a whole lot. There are definitely games I think don't translate well, or you really just gotta pull at strings to make them a thing. Like, let me look at my games because I obviously didn't write any of these down. The problem is I immediately jumped to like, I don't think Kirby would make a good translation. Kirby got a show, so my bad. I genuinely think Mario was a stretch. I'm curious how this movie's going to be. Battlefield, that's another one. I'm kind of just looking at my games and being like, yeah, what doesn't really make sense? A lot of games are already adaptations. So like Star Wars games, they're already an adaptation of Star Wars movies, in their extended stories or whatever. But I didn't really consider those for this list. Sports games don't make sense. Like Forza, it's just a racing movie with a name on it. What'd you find out?
There is it's going to be I think a show on Hulu. Actually, I think a movie on Hulu.
There really are a lot more video game adaptations these days, and I don't think most of them are bad. I think most of them are actually just decent to good. There just doesn't seem to be any high profile, like, wow, that was amazing. Like, I thought Detective Pikachu was pretty good, but it's not like a 10 out of 10, that's an amazing, gotta see it. I am hoping, based on the reviews and how the first episode went, I think Last of Us really could be the first, like, perfect. Like, go see it. It's fantastic. Might not be everybody's cup of tea because it's horror and whatever, but I mean, it's not a bad show by any means. It's really, really good. I'm hoping that ends up being the case. I don't quite know yet, but that's what I've learned from this whole discussion. So, Justin, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Uh, no, I kind of hate you. You took everything I wanted, but this did help me realize that there's a lot more adaptations than I thought there was for video games.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some of the ones I thought about. Sorry, my phone just went off. Some of the ones that I thought about that I wanted to take that are already existing. They're working on a Fallout show. I think Fallout would be a really interesting one. They're working on a Mass Effect show. I thought that would be really interesting. I still want a good Halo adaptation. No, the first season was not good. No, I don't have any faith that the second season is going to be good. I would like to see that redone. Really, like, there's a lot of adaptations where I'm like, oh, that would be great. It already exists. It would be great if they did it again, but good this time. Like Mario. I think this one will be good. I'm glad it's getting redone. I would like to see more Pokemon, obviously. Well, ironically, there's the movie, but then there's also been the fact that there's been an anime series for the last 20 years. But a really, really good, like, unique live action show for Pokemon would be interesting. I don't know. I don't know what else off the top of my head. So I'm gonna leave it at that. We've been recording for a while. Well, thank you for going back and watching this episode once we're rich and famous, of course.
Of course.
And we're content creator of the year, the Game Awards, and all these amazing things that'll totally happen.
I'm gonna give Jeff Keighley a smooch on the cheek.
Oh yeah. I'm not, but
Unlucky.
it happens. But yeah, thank you so much for just I don't know, what am I saying? Screw you. You suck. Goodbye. This was fun. Gibby.